Now, I was supposed to post this video a long time ago, but then work and life kind of got in the way, so here we are. Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the Methernet channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. Now, of course, as we progress to DBT04, there are bound to be some interesting things that we might see. Now, for this video in particular, I will be going through some of my speculations as well as thoughts on the grade 4 Bruce that will be coming out for DBT04, which is this card, the Unrivaled Bruce. Now, of course, all of the starter decks grade 3 does have an evolution grade 4, which we see currently in this image. At this point of the video, we already know 3 of these boss units skill out of the 5, with the last 2 being Unrivaled Bruce as well as Bastion Prime. The 3 that has been revealed does do a significantly power creep to their own decks in their own perspective, and it does introduce kind of a unique synergy. Now, of course, in this particular video, we're going to go through the Unrivaled Bruce. Now, first of all, what we know so far of all the grade 4 is that they are all grade 4, obviously. They do not have the personal right icon, means that even if you ride the same unit on top of your grade 3 bosses, you're not going to get the personal right. They do have a natural triple drive for all the grade 4s. This triple drive can be a compensation of you not having the personal right, because as we all know, if we do ride into personal right targets, of course, if we do re-ride into your grade 3 units, you do get to draw 1, and that's where the draw comes in. You basically exchange power and draw for a extra drive, which to some might not seem to be very significant, but for some decks it's actually quite significant, especially Bastion Prime, depending on what his skill is. These grade 4 of course inherit pretty much all of their grade 3 skills, with of course Magnolia does inherit the multiple attack from the back row skill. Maha Nirvana does Sapiro Call 1 grade 0 from the drop zone, which most likely gonna be your Trickstar, as well as giving power to your front row. And of course Seraph Snow does what Seraph Snow does by imprisoning even more cards, as well as providing power to not only herself but also the front row. These grade 4 also remove some of the restriction to activate the full skill. For example, Magnolia does not require you to personal right in order to enable you to have 6 attack in that turn, so that's really good. Maha Nirvana technically still has that restriction there, because you're basically still gonna pay 1 counterblast and discard 1 to call grade 0 as well as give your front row power, but there's also an extra skill which deal and damage to your opponent if your opponent is at 4 or below, so it's still basically the same cost. And for Seraph Pure Light, it's because of due to how accelerate her skill becomes, it makes sense that Seraph Pure Light does have a heavier cost, which is Counterblast 1 as well as Soul Blast 1 Seraph Snow, Seraph cards from the Soul. And it basically accelerates what she does, and also with an additional skills. And of course, this brings me to my next point, which is they only add like 1 very small power creep skill, but that is before Seraph Pure Light actually reveal. After Seraph Pure Light reveal, it's no longer a small power creep. Magnolia Elder does give your units to be able to attack from the back row as well as power. What Magnolia Elder also does is giving your rear guards to intercept from the back row. So it's actually a very small power creep as well as a small defense creep. It's a little bit different from the other grade 4s. For Maha Nirvana, it's the 1 small power creep skill to what Nirvana does is basically deal 1 damage for free, but then you also risk your opponent getting a damage trigger. So it's, I mean, it's not the end of the day, but if your opponent does not get the damage trigger, they're basically in deep shit. And for Seraph Snow, yeah, Seraph Snow, it's not a small power creep anymore. It's a huge power creep. But considering the fact that Seraph Snow deck does not really have a finisher, I mean, it's pretty much justified for Bushiroad to design Seraph Pure Light skill to be like what Seraph Pure Light does. And of course, this point has been mentioned before. They do maintain or have lesser cost for skill activation, but this is not the case for Seraph Pure Light, because she does a lot for that one skill, so it makes sense to actually increase the cost for her skill. For the other two, it's pretty much fair game because they really only do like that one thing and not have anything extra that is very threatening to the opponent. And of course, the lastly is any of the skill activation for all of the grade 4s does involves the grade 3. For Magnolia Elder is that you need a Magnolia in the rear guard or in the soul. For Maha Nirvana, you just need to discard a Nirvana from hand, and then you're basically good to go for the skill. For Seraph Snow, you will need to basically soul blast out the Seraph unit from your soul, which will kind of want you to rewrite into your Seraph Pure Light every single turn if you do want to keep imprisoned units from their soul, hand, as well as rear guards. So that's basically what we know so far. Now, of course, let's start with the fundamental difference of going from Violence Bruce to Unrivaled Bruce. First, of course, is the pretty obvious one. The name change will, of course, affect existing card support that Bruce actually have, in particularly the Final Rush support. Now, of course, not every single card is going to be affected by this name change because there's actually two types of support for Bruce. One is the Final Rush support as well as the name support. The first card that comes in mind that is affected by this name change is of course Acrobat Presenter, which is in the starter deck. Now the changes to Acrobat Presenter, if you are running her, is that Acrobat Presenter skill will never be at 100% after you rewrite into the grade 4 Unrivaled Bruce. While yes, you still get part of the skill, but then it's not going to be 100%. You will get the Soul Charge 1 on your third turn, meaning that when your Vanguard is Violence Bruce, you still get the Soul Charge 1. After you rode into the grade 4 is when you start to have your Final Rush thing going on. You still get the Soul Charge 1. So you will never be able to Soul Charge 2, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, depending on what your situation is. If you still run Acrobat Presenter in the scenario where you're just that one soul away from activating skills, yeah, it's gonna be bad. And that's the bad thing. The good thing is that you're able to have more controls of the amount of cards that you soul charge. The next one is not gonna be as significant because not all builds is gonna run this card. The next card, of course, it's a Blitz Order. This special violence yell, I think that's the name, that gives one of your Violence Bruce the 20k power, which makes this a 20k shield. You can no longer do that if you ride into Unrivaled Bruce, the grade 4. So the changes here is that you probably will only want to use this on your third turn when you are at Violence Bruce for that extra survivability as well as shield, because this is a 20k shield. It's not something you should be scoffing at. This card will basically be useless after you ride into Unrivaled Bruce because it's no longer Violence Bruce at that point. So you could use this on a rearguard Violence Bruce, but I don't think you will run any more grade 3 Bruce in your deck after Unrivaled Bruce comes out. The next card is gonna be more meta defining card or lineup, I guess, because everyone wants to run Leonard. Now, most of Leonard's skill is going to still go off even if you are in grade 4 Bruce. The 5k power and column hitting of Leonard's skills is still intact because it's basically locked to Final Rush, which will be activated after turn 4. You will still Soul Charge 1 when Leonard attack hits because that part is not locked to your grade 3 Bruce. The only part of Leonard's skill that is being tied to Violence Bruce's name is basically the Superior Call from Soul skill. Because if you reread what Leonard's skill is, the second part of the second skill of Leonard is that you will need to have a Violence Bruce Vanguard. Only then you're able to Superior Call a card from the soul to an open rearguard. So after going into grade 4, you will no longer be able to call things out from the soul with Leonard if you attack hit with Leonard. So it's not going to be a massive change, maybe a small change for Leonard. Now, these three are basically going to be the cards that is actually going to be affected, but there are of course other cards that is being affected by the name change. But we have cards like these that is being affected, but if you do run this card in your deck, it means there's something wrong with you, if of course you're not a budget player, because this card is just bad. The next fundamental change that we have from this transition from Violence Bruce to Unrivaled Bruce is that the triple drive as well as the personal right icon. Now, sometimes the personal right is actually a good thing because you're still able to draw a card, and that draw could mean the difference between a combo play as well as a whiff play, because you might not have all the combo pieces that you have. It's kind of a situational nerve, I would say, because if you do have all of the key pieces in your hand for that combo play, this personal right icon is not really an issue. The triple drive, on the other hand, is quite nice, but the problem here is that you're playing a soul charging deck, which means that most of the time your triggers is gonna go to the soul. Don't really emphasize too much on the triple drive. Without the personal right icon, it also means that Bruce may have a weaker offensive power, but not really, because we have a lot of cards that basically give power to whatever units in the front row. For example, Hellblast Full Dive, Pandemonium Tactics, Regina, even Gear Dober is able to provide power to any unit on the field. Now, the only card that is affected by the triple drive icon is actually Mabel, which is this card, because Mabel does not technically give Bruce the +1 drive. It actually gives Bruce triple drive, which Unrivaled Bruce already has a triple drive. It will not +1 because it is not +1, so do keep that in mind. Now, for the spill speculation, of course, considering all of the things that we know so far from all the Great Force that has been revealed, these are all the skills that we may see from Unrivaled Bruce. Unrivaled Bruce will be a Final Rush enabler, just like the Grade 3 Violence Bruce, because up until this point, Violence Bruce is the only one that actually enables Final Rush. So this card will have to have the Final Rush enabler skill, because after you ride into Unrivaled Bruce, you are still in Final Rush because of the Grade 3 skill. But after that, if Unrivaled Bruce does not have the Final Rush enabler, it means that your deck is basically useless after the Grade 4 ride. So of course, Final Rush enabler will definitely be there. The second one, of course, is Final Rush may last for the entire fight, including the opponent's turn. Now, this one is similar to how the Overtrigger for Dark States work. You basically, once you drive check into that Overtrigger, your Vanguard until the end of this fight gets a 10k and a crit. So possibly how this Final Rush works, it will basically last until the entire fight. This will basically solve the Final Rush issue going from Grade 3 Bruce to Grade 4 Bruce. And also, this also opens up for some defensive support for Bruce that basically needs you to be in Final Rush in order to activate, which is also really nice. The skill cost that is needed to activate Unrivaled Bruce will definitely include the Grade 3 Bruce, as we saw with Maha-Nirvana, Magnolia Elder, as well as Seraph Pure Light. That is without a question. Now, for my speculation for Bruce here is that multiple skill will activate based on how many soul was blasted when you're activating Unrivaled Bruce skill. Something similar like how Barrow Magnus or Flakberg skill works. One of the skills will be calling units from the soul, which is going to be really great and also does go well with Marjorie as well as Dober, because they do technically eat one unit away to activate their skills or move themselves to soul and give another unit 10k power. There is another unit that I forgot to put in, of course, Protobulb, because Protobulb also put one unit to soul and get something from the soul to your hand. And of course, the restanding front row rear guards is definitely be there, unless of course they wanted to change things, which I don't think they will. Restanding front row rear guard is still there, but most likely it will further powers up those units that restands, because why the hell not? Maybe those rear guards that restands does get an on hit effect or vice versa to basically increase the pressure on your opponent. But I don't think an on-hit skill makes sense here. A skill that basically activates when those units do not hit does make sense here. But then this is probably going to have some people flame me about it, and it's gonna encourage Bruce to be even more broken. These skill may only be specific to units with the Diabolos name, because we have a lot of Diabolos at this point, and all of them basically are really good units. Who knows, if they do go to that specific name to give the skill, this does works well. And of course, a lot of cards that basically gives you the soul will be crucial in order for Bruce to have enough soul to activate all of the skills that Unrivaled Bruce may have. Cards like Derek as well as Regina, who gives you soul, is really important. And of course, the other card Pandemonium Tactics is also very crucial if Bushiroad decided to go this route with Unrivaled Bruce. And the last one is, of course, a possible Vanguard restanding skill. This one is a little bit iffy, because if you give Unrivaled Bruce the restand skill, everyone will freak out. I don't think it will happen, but based on what we see for all of the supports up until now, we start to see that they are starting to pump Bruce as a Vanguard even more. They give a lot of power to Bruce and even critical to Bruce. So Unrivaled Bruce restanding may not seem very far-fetched, but I do not think it will happen. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section on what do you think will be the skill for Unrivaled Bruce. Personally, I am excited and worried at the same time, because I do see a lot of people complaining about Bruce being broken. Do let me know what do you think, and are you excited for Unrivaled Bruce to be revealed this coming Monday for my time? Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and also do remember to ring the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.